Hey class, um, this is our week 4 discussion question 1 video post. Question being, how were the Ten Commandments originally communicated and what would it be like to be in the audience? After reading through Deuteronomy 5 and kind of getting re-reminded of what this was like, it really sounds kind of like a Michael Bay movie. Verse 22 says, "These are the commandments the Lord proclaimed in a loud voice to your whole assembly there on the mountain from out of the fire, the cloud, and a deep darkness. And he added nothing more, then wrote to them on 2 stone tablets and gave them to me." So it really sounds like this very kind of ominous scene is set here. And there's a fire going on, and a cloud of darkness comes over, and I just imagine from this cloud of darkness, the Ten Commandments on these stone plates, I guess, just come dropping down, and then they're in Moses' possession. And if I were in the audience, sitting there watching this happen, I don't know how I would react. After reading a lot of the Old Testament and kind of getting refamiliarized with a lot of these stories and kind of refamiliarized really who God is, it seems like it was very intense, and the scenes were very purposeful, and they were somewhat designed to be very kind of ominous and dark, and really powerful. I think it's really powerful that God kind of sets those things up that way. Because if I were sitting here watching this happen, I would, one, never forget that moment, but two, I would be sitting there in awe, kind of watching this mountain come ablaze, and from a dark cloud, these 10 Commandments fall into Moses' possession. I'd be in just total shock, I think. But at the same time, if I were putting myself really in these people's shoes and I've been around, I don't know how I would react then. I don't know how I would react if I were to kind of be familiar with these instances. But me right now, I'd just definitely be in total awe, just seeing how powerful God is, and just like hearing a voice come from all of that. There's this voice coming out of these. It says in 23, it actually says, "When you heard the voice out of the darkness while the mountain was ablaze with fire, all of the leaders of your tribe and elders came to me." And I think it's true. I think, like, again, if I were there, I'd want to go check that out. I'd be like, what's happening over there? Why is this mountain on fire? And why is there a voice coming from a cloud? And pillars are falling from the sky. But yeah, and then it's also interesting, my thought now, I think that a really big misconception is that God is butterflies and rainbows, and everything is really happy and peace and calm, and just kind of these like softer things. I think that a lot of people look at God in that way, and he's a very loving God. He's a loving father, and he takes care of his children. But like I said, he's also very intense, and can be, I think, as a person who doesn't follow God and doesn't know and not familiar with the Old Testament, and especially for me working in youth ministry, kind of showing these stories to some kids, they get a very like strange look on their face, and because they have this idea that God is soft and butterflies, rainbows, like all those kind of things that I was just saying. But in reality, and when what we read in the Old Testament, it's not always the case. God is very real. He's very intense, and he wants the things that he says to mean something and be meaningful, and they do. And I think a part of that is because of how he portrays them and gives them. And I just think, like, one of the stories that comes to my head is when he's talking to Moses about how he cannot look at him in the face, so he's going to cover his eyes, and then he'll look at him in the back, and he's very intense in that moment, and he's telling Moses, like, hey, you cannot do this. So yeah, it's definitely a good reminder, I think, reading this, and truly being reminded of who God is, and the character that God is in the Old Testament, and his personality traits, and how he kind of operates. So yeah, those are some of my thoughts. Like I say, I'm always excited to hear others, and I hope you guys are having an awesome day.